Hello, everybody. Welcome to Resilience+Rise, the podcast where we transform adversities into triumph, illuminate the extraordinary potential within all of us. When I talk about extraordinary, these are just ordinary people, but they have done something extra, and we call them as extraordinary. And yes, it is within all of us. I'm your host, Thomas Scaria, a resilience coach, a ultra marathoner, and a firm believer in your next most powerful chapter. This podcast is a companion to my upcoming book, Resilience Plus Rise 26.2 Transformative Miles to Unleash the Marathon of Your Life Mindset, coming April 2025. Here we amplify stories of hope, perseverance, success to inspire your journey. Today, I'm honored to welcome Tarik Elmetaal, the founder of OHM Performance Framework. Tarik has dedicated over 30 years to enhancing human potential and well being. From the wards of NHS to the serene landscape of India, he helps the C suite executives and high performing teams to achieve peak performance, stability, without sacrificing their well being. His approach is totally holistic, integrating physical wellness, psychological resilience, and emotional stability, and even spiritual fulfillment. Tarek believes, as he puts, there are no saints without a past and no sinner without a future. He is here to share his wisdom and explore how it is being in life, wherein he puts in as the resistance training, life's challenges, and can be a template for a profound personal transformation. With this, Tariq, welcome to Resilience Plus Rise.
Thomas, it's a real pleasure for me, real pleasure. Thank you for that amazing, very generous introduction. So, and
As I would say, you're so worth it, Tariq. You're so worth it.
very
So,
kind.
when we're talking about your journey, what
Yeah.
people see you, and if people have Googled you, or people who are people who have known you, but then there are listeners, I believe, who have not been aware about who you are. If you could just give a snapshot about how, or let me put it in, who are you?
Um, Great question. I think we unravel who we are as life goes on. We kind of make sense of experiences we've had as children. I had a very challenging childhood. Um, very challenging, and it ended up I came from Egypt originally and came over to England in 1976 with my brother and my parents. My father was a doctor, but we had a very challenging childhood. Again, I can talk about it very openly, but with lots of compassion and love. It's just a very my father was a very kind of he had great intentions, great ideas, but delivered them in a very distorted way that ended up being quite abusive, is the best word to put it. So it kind of that kind of set, as you probably know, sort of your personality is forged between 0 and 7. So, and it's something that actually my older brother and I go through talking about, where how have we been affected by our childhood and where we've been imprinted with certain narratives and ways of thinking and belief systems, and how we've been trying to unravel those and reprogram ourselves differently over the years. But basically, it culminated into, sort of when I was 15, I ended up leaving home very young, unprepared, and really struggled and suffered, where I ended up actually, this I'm giving you key moments that happened. I literally went without food for 5 days, and I was in a very low state of mind. And it was a non-consciously thought of fast. You can look at it, but it led me to a very deep spiritual experience. And
Mhm.
it was actually almost that was what was necessary for me at the time, because I didn't see a light in the world, in a sense. There's buddy to rescue me, sort of no Thomas with, to come and pull me out. There was none of that. I was on my own. So, and I believe there's layers in life. And sometimes when we go into the depth of suffering, certain layers get revealed. And within them is whatever is necessary for you to help you at the time. Or sometimes, sadly not. Sometimes, and this is where the resilience potentially comes in, to be able to go through enough suffering to still survive, to then learn the lessons and come out the other side a stronger human being. As Friedrich Nietzsche said, what doesn't kill me will make me stronger. But obviously, it may kill you, and some people don't survive it. So I was fortunate enough to have survived, and this spiritual experience was quite incredible. And it awakened me to hold on. There's much more to life than this. My life isn't just this history of suffering and then aloneness and then starvation and then where am I going? And I really feel that was a momentous moment for me of shifting to the next place. Again, it's not something that someone can experience. So for your listeners, I'm not suggesting that people put themselves through 5 days of suffering or starvation. However, when you cleanse the body completely of everything and you are in that deep state of emptiness, I do believe there's some very powerful energies that are there waiting for you to help you. I see that's my personal experience. I'm not saying that there aren't also negative forces at play at those times, but it's almost a bit like the story of the two wolves, always fighting, and whoever you feed the most. And I think I was in a deep state of desire to live and desire for some kind of salvation in some way from the situation I was in. So that's that part. I then ended up entering into in becoming a nurse, actually. So I worked with elderly people to get experience. Then I applied and got accepted to enter into nursing school, which I did in 1988. And again, which I stayed there for about 20 years, actually, from that point. That was transformational too, because I then had the experience of dealing and working with people at their most vulnerable. There's no separation socioeconomically, race, anything. When you're in deep suffering, you're in deep state of suffering. It doesn't matter. But to then sit with people in their deep state of suffering was very powerful. To be with dying people, to be with people at all different stages of life and death, towards death, beings towards death, and beings towards life, and everything in between. So I began to see actually the hospital was like a very deeply spiritual, energetic place where life was entering, life was leaving. There's these people in between trying to guide people, facilitating hopefully towards life, but also helping towards death. But I did see a big gap where, as much as I saw it as spiritual, it was very allopathic, means it was just very kind of medical model. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a lot done when it came to deep spirituality, when people are really dying. In between that experience, I was dealing then with the side effects of my childhood, okay? Which then led me into some very dark places, with myself and, the two wolves. Again, I was feeding the wrong wolf for a long time, and I realized that how I was beginning to realize what kind of a person, that my childhood had created me to be, even though I was working. So there's this constant battle, almost like a spiritual battle within me. I ended up then having a very serious back injury that was actually very, very serious, that they wanted to operate. They talked about potentially amputating my leg from the knee down because the sciatica was so severe. It caused a lot of damage to something called the peroneal nerve, which runs down the outside of the lower leg. But I couldn't stand up. It was like I lost control over my foot. It was horrendous, and I was disabled. I became completely disabled. And as soon as they were talking about surgery and amputation, and I was a young man, I was like 22. I was like, no, I'm not. I walked out of the office, the consultant's office, And I said, no, I'm going to heal myself, So I didn't listen to what they were saying, which I think is very powerful, because I'm sure you understand the concept of placebo and the concept of the opposite, which is nocebo. Yeah. By being told something negative, you believe it by someone who you potentially trust, can have the same effect as someone giving you something, saying that's going to make you feel better, to say to you, you're not going to be able to work again, you're not going to be able to exercise and play sports, and sports were a big part of my life. You're not going to be able to train in the gym anymore. I was like, no, I had to shut that out. And I went on a journey of rehabilitating myself through all kinds of things, spiritually, physical rehab, obviously. I learned to become much more flexible. I began to study and understand how the body worked a lot more. And then this culminated then into me deciding I'm going to take a break from the NHS, and I'm going to go off traveling. And the idea was to go off, and the journey I actually wanted was going to become something else. My friend and I were going to go to India to become Bollywood actors. It was like this crazy,
Cool.
crazy
Okay.
idea we had. And but it actually, that's what we went with, the intention, and not returning back to England. And then I ended up, my friend ended up returning back to England after 4 weeks. But I felt when I landed in India, I remember kissing the ground, thinking, wow, I feel I'm at home here. Something about this place feels really connected to me. And I just felt alive. It's like if you put a plant in the right environment, it just begins to grow and thrive. And that's exactly what I felt when I was there. And I was working within a few weeks. I was doing all kinds of amazing experiences. And then I had just a multitude of just very powerful short stories that actually I would one day like to write as a book, because they're very meaningful. That helped me, led me to living out in the forests and the jungles this is in Goa, but inland near Maharashtra.
Yep.
And it's there that I had my next, what I call major transformation. So because my back injury was like bringing me to my knees. It was like, it was the ego being brought down to its knees. And because I felt I wasn't a good person in lots of ways, I was a bit of a playboy and all these kind of things, which this is the remnants of my childhood. And I just didn't heal, and I didn't know how to heal, and I had no mentors. And so I had no guidance, which is why what you do and what I do now, and I've got 6 children now, is learning how to become a guide. And if children say, oh, but Dad, you did this when you were younger. I said, but I didn't have a guide. I didn't have anybody showing me a different way. And if I did, I probably wouldn't have done it, because if I had a good guide, he would have helped me and nudged me away from that way of living. And so when I then lived out in the open, I ended up it was almost intuitively, it led me to a series of rituals, I'd say, and behaviors that help me, what I call, exercise a lot of the baggage that I've been carrying emotionally for a number of years. And sometimes being alone, just like when I remember being alone for 5 days of no food, again, that being alone and allowing yourself to go into deep places. This time I was like living out in the open. Initially there was an extreme fear and terror, and that again humbled me. But then there was a surrender. A bit like when you start running, the first few K, what am I doing? And you think of all the ways you want to stop, okay, I need to stop because this, yeah. But something takes you, if you go that little bit further, you surrender. There's a surrendering, isn't there, with running?
Sure.
I've done, marathons, 10K was always, I did a lot of 10Ks and stuff. That was my distance, but I know the feeling. It's a similar feeling. And when you surrender, and you truly surrender, then magical things begin to happen. The same when you're going through pain and suffering. When you want to give up, if you just go a little bit further, just round the corner is the light. It's just there, but it's about that resilience that you got to develop to go that little bit further. And a lot of that is overcoming, which for me at the time was the fear of death, the fear of suffering. Yeah. And from that, I actually had a huge release of emotional baggage, that the first thing I wanted to do was to find my father, reclaim a relationship with my father when I came back to England, which I did find him, but he wasn't overly receptive to, me reaching out to him. That's fine. I went without expectation, because that's the thing you learn, is that soon with humanity is you can't expect from other people. You have to just be yourself, and that's enough. If whatever comes back, you just need to know how to respond to it, but don't have the expectation. You can live a much happier, more peaceful life if that's the case, which is really tough to do, because we all have expectations, especially when you're in relationships with people, friends, family, but actually to still learn to have no expectations, even from friends, family, spouse, children, is actually quite powerful to be. And so then I ended up going back working in the NHS again when I came back from India, but I had a different mindset to it. And I ended up working with Alzheimer's, first of all, in the private sector, with Alzheimer's and dementia, which again was an incredible experience. Because it's another form of palliative care. It's also you're dealing with an understanding as well, sort of the loneliness of, people, especially when they get to certain ages, that, we've moved so far away from this collectivist community sort of way of living to much more individualistic, which I know it's a difficult thing, but again, it's what we've been conditioned to believe. I remember when I was in India, they were telling me they didn't even know what nursing homes were at the time. This was in the 90s.
Yep.
They didn't have nursing homes. They didn't, your parents just live with you and you just look after them. So, I learned a lot from that experience as well, about being there for people, listening as well, learning the art of listening, because a lot of people and patience, because they repeat a lot of things over and over again.
Of course, yeah.
And then there's the real art of not losing your patience, in that, which is a beautiful quality to have. And then I went into pediatrics. And so because I felt I wanted to work with children, because I love the mindset of children, because we've lost a lot of the skills that they have, and I wanted to be reminded of the spontaneity, the imagination, and the fearlessness and the courageousness of children, which you see especially when you work with children, especially going through oncology, and they've been diagnosed with cancers and leukemias and things. It's unbelievable how they go through it. Honestly, Thomas, it's unbelievable. But they have this incredible, and they're more malleable, their minds are more malleable, to take them to more positive thinking, to take them to more imaginative ways of thinking about your experience, to actually make it, more healing for them, to be able to get through it. It's amazing. It's amazing. And then, I met Petrina, and I met Petrina just before I went to India. And we then rekindled our relationship when I came back from India. And then we started having our children sort of like at that point. And we had a lot of children. We had 6 children. And then, again, the challenges of relationships, and you go through them. You both have baggage. You go through that, and it's very tough. It's very tough, and it continues to be tough. But that's okay, And that's what It's again that giving up, and there's a time when you have to say enough is enough at some stages, in some experiences in your life. But obviously, meaningful experiences, you have to keep fighting as much as you can, as well. Meaningful. But our children now are much older. They've grown to, the youngest is 19, the eldest is 30. So it's pretty, it's kind of amazing. But the other major point in my life, which again, I'm just giving you the things that the key moments. Obviously being with Petrina is a key experience as well. um, because your relationships at home really bring out a lot of the stuff that you feel that, oh, I feel I've dealt with a lot of things, but actually digs up some deeper stuff that only your spouse can bring out in you, which is really important too. And you actually, you, our spouses can become our gurus because they
Reflections.
they extract. If you're still reactive, well, there's unhealed stuff that you need to work through. So the more it keeps getting revealed, well, that's better, because it's got to work at it. You got to reveal until you can come back with compassion. You can actually enter the relationship compassionate and not reactive, but responding in the right way. And then we had our son Byron, who, when he was 3, he's 23 now, was diagnosed with severe autism. And I remember, I was working pediatrics at the time, so we were very fortunate because we had him diagnosed quickly, and he got into a great school from a young age. But I remember coming out of, my friend Jayantha, who diagnosed him, I just went, okay, fine. Just went home and, okay, let's learn about autism and let's learn about Byron. And we went through a really tough time because he was severely autistic. He was like a feral child. And we really went through a journey as a family with that. But he is an absolute angelic being living with us now. He's like an angel walking amongst men, because we really worked hard to allow him to enter this world, socialize him in a way that he's so adaptable for someone severely autistic. But we've maintained the purity, the love. So now we live with someone who's just pure love. He's just pure in every way, so genuine, amazing, in just pure intention, no agenda, nothing. So I'm so proud of what we've done with Byron, because he is just incredible to have now in not just our lives, and just in the world. So, but again, that experience with Byron also, I say to him, Byron, I want to be more like you. I don't want you to be like me. I know it's the opposite, where parents say, well, we're trying to make them like, like us. But no, I want to be more like Byron, because Byron is the epitome of what true human love and compassion is. He's that. So that's another momentous, because again, all these things are the links that I put together that made me into a good coach. The NHS experience, the suffering, the pain, the being the sinner, and trying to become, sort of get myself out of that, and not become a saint, but just try and be a better human being through that journey, and that's it. Just try and be a better human being, and keep that trying to be a better human being on a day-to-day basis, moment-to-moment basis, by holding our thoughts accountable. And then I ended up leaving the NHS about 17 years ago, because I'd had enough. It was changing the NHS in the UK. It was an amazing institution, and then became much more like a business. It was very under a lot of stress. There was understaffed, and the model was just deeply lacking in the holistic element. And I was just not happy with just giving medications to chronic conditions that you could see that there's emotional, sort of source to these problems, that lifestyle could solve a lot of these things, and that we needed to invest more into that side of things. So I ended up having literally like a feeling that came through me one evening when I finished very late, and I just felt my whole body, like energy going through my body, and it just went to my head and said, you can never come back here again. And I literally finished my notes, went home, and I never came back. I actually said I was stressed. I said, I've got 6 kids. I've got Byron, like at the height of his, sort of really difficult, challenging stages. It's not a highly, sort of well-paid job when you have 6 children, when you're working, even though I was managing the ward a lot of the time. So I just took time off and then handed my notice and left, never went back. So sometimes that feeling of intuition, I was very much about acting from intuition, because that's how my life organically had led me from one thing to the next.
Okay.
And so I just went, I can't come back.
Okay. Before we can get into the chapter of you as a coach, or you as a person who's driving, there are a few elements that just came to my mind. Is that when you were talking about your wife Petrina, or you're talking about your son Byron, for me, I believe is that a lot of elements, whether it is the good or the bad or the ugly, comes out as a reflection to the people who are nearest to us.
Mm,
So
absolutely.
when we are talking about Byron itself, all I could think was you knew what he was going through. You had your own challenges, but what you gave him was just a bouquet and a bouquet and a bouquet of love
Yeah.
and compassion. And that's what he has grown up to be. He has
Mm.
not seen anything else. He has never seen a part of our angry father. Maybe, but he has not seen that.
No, no,
But what? Yeah,
we've been very open. Look,
yeah.
I've got a belief system around that it's look, we came from dysfunctional backgrounds, Katrina and I. We came from abused,
Hmm.
seriously abused backgrounds. So it would be a miracle for us not to have some level of volatility in our relationship. It's impossible, and so there
Okay.
was. But as much as we never shied away from arguing in front of the children, but we made up in front of the children. So they
Beautiful.
both. They
Okay.
understand it's a normal part of life to actually argue. They weren't crazy. Like, we made sure that was kept the crazy side away from the children. But um, but they also see us make up. It's important that you can make up in front of children. We never
Beautiful.
tiptoed around the kids and never made noise. No, they grew up with noise, and it's just part of having a big family. It was very natural, and so they grew up with they have actually got a huge amount of resilience themselves, the children,
Fantastic.
and they're beautiful kids. They're lovely,
Of
lovely
course.
children. But you're
So,
right.
so here again, when we talk about the purpose, which is the next topic that we will be coming to, is that one of my guests, and in fact, when we were in discussion, what came up was our true purpose comes out from our deepest of pains.
Mm,
That was number one, and especially the learnings that you've learned, whether it was through running away from home, being hungry, whether it was mentally, physically, spiritually, and and I believe the light always, as Rumi says, is that the light, the brightest of light, comes from our deepest of wounds, and that's what we put across. So, we come to the next particular element is that now you are a coach that's redefining a lot of elements which people go through. If people go through the internet, and guys, I will be putting out Tarik's links on the comments, so do have a look onto it. Yes, you do a lot of workout, you are physically fit, etc., but there is a holistic element that you work towards making a person, when they come and meet you and when they walk off from you, it's a different sense of being. So can you spend a little time about what is that you're doing now?
yeah, sure. So I work in the corporate world. So I look after a big finance company. I started off with working with the C-suite. The CEO was he was the first person I worked with. Actually, he wanted to run a marathon in 3 hours, and in his mid 40s, which he did. We trained for it, and he managed to do it. Um, and it's interesting because I've got my framework is based around four pillars. As a human temple, there's a spiritual aspect, there is a physical aspect, there's an intellectual aspect, and there's an emotional aspect, and they're all interlinked. But it's like, if you don't look after all the pillars, if you just concentrate on one, the others begin to crack and begin to crumble. And if you ignore them for long enough, the temple can collapse as a result of that. And I've seen that in the hospital setting, and I've seen that outside, just in life, where people can mentally and emotionally collapse the temple. Most people, if you look at the finance world, enter through the physical door, the physical pillar, because the day and age that we live in, the modern world, geographically where they're born, it's kind of a modern thing where everybody wants to look good. Everybody wants to live longer. Everybody wants to look good. And I think I was given skills and tools, sort of my gifts that allowed me an ability to draw people in with that side of things. I'm 55, and so I've always looked after myself really well, and I believe that, and I've got good energy. I can reflect health and well-being to people, so they can feel safe with that. Oh, I'll enter through that door. But someone enters through that door, and then I gently nudge them towards what's it like through the emotional door? What's it like in your spiritual pillar? And again, spiritual can be also existential, meaning it's some people who believe in a faith, in a religious faith. That's
Hmm.
fine. There's a lot of things built into that when it comes to purpose and meaning during life and after life. So the fear of death for people who are true believers, dissipates just from the belief in religion. People who are more existentialist in their thinking then may follow the thinking that, well, there is no inherent meaning in life. There's an absurdity, as Albert Camus talked about. There's an absurdity to life, which I get it. I get what he's talking about. And so with that, it makes sense that you create your own purpose. And, you can pick certain values that work, and, they're universal values. Oh, let's be kind to each other. Let's be compassionate to each other.
Hmm.
Let's help another person and not just think of ourselves, and actually go out there to help others in some way. Like my son Byron, he has really sort of positive intent, and he genuinely cares about other people. It's genuine. Can we develop that skill of having genuine intent to caring about others, that you see others as almost, you get to the point where you can see them as an extension of yourself in some way, which is really hard to actually think like that. Yeah. And so, sorry, going to ask something.
No, no, no. I was going to say is that when you're talking about whether it's Byron or whether you're talking about other humans, what I'm hearing from you, and in fact, it's one of my um deepest of uh, pillars, is that we all are like angels with one wing. It's only
Mhm.
when we hold another, whether you're holding Petrina or whether you're holding Byron, that's when, as an angel with one wing, when you hold somebody else, they also got another wing, and that's when you start flying.
Yeah, it's
That's
beautiful.
when you become more higher, you elevate yourself as a human. And that's what I've been hearing from you, is that what you have always developed, whether it was working with the NHS, or whether it was working with the Alzheimer's, or whether it was with the pediatrics, it was all about giving yourself. But it was not giving yourself, but what you realized was they were also helping you to grow as a human
Sure,
into
sure.
something more profound, or something which was more stronger. And that's what I hear as you as a coach. Sorry, please continue.
Absolutely, no, you're absolutely right. And I think what these experiences, the negative side that I think I started to try and rebuild again, was the loss of empathy that I had from my childhood. I
Hmm.
had to spend a lifetime rebuilding it, because it's incredible. It's very powerful when unconsciously parents, do things to their children when they're young. You've got to really think, am I what am I creating as an adult here? What am I leaving them a lot of problems? You can leave them all the money in the world, but if you've left them with not enough love and abuse, etc., well, you've left them with lifelong issues that no matter how much money they have is not going to take it away. So I recognize that, and I realize that actually by me then immersing myself with the skills that I've got, because I really feel that the humanity is a society, it's a community, and it's the planet works as one symbiotic being. And I feel that's what we're like when we work together. It's such a beautiful thing. Just like, we're connecting and talking now. It's such, you can feel the energy. It's beautiful, And so that's what I felt I needed to then use the experience I've had to do that. So going back to the question about how I help people, generally people come in through the physical, but what very quickly seems to be revealed, I think partly one of my key skills as a coach is my ability to build rapport and people to feel safe with me. And I think that's because I've had 20 years of working in the NHS with vulnerable people in all kinds of situations, that people instantly feel that they can relax and be safe. And I'm not going to condemn them. Judgment is one thing. Everybody judges, that's fine, but no condemnation. That's the dark side of judgment. Judgment is a healthy thing, but condemnation is the dark side of it. We don't want to go down that path. Some people feel like that. And so they feel safe. That means they can grow. And I suppose for me as a coach, when I initially started doing sort of more sports-based coaching, it's more instructive. And so it evolved as you become more experienced and learn the knowledge and educated in coaching, you become more facilitative. And I suppose I'm a bit eclectic. I'm not very good at being stuck in one thing and both
Okay.
thing. So I float between consultant, mentor, coach, so facilitative, instructive, advisory. So I float between depending on the circumstance and
You,
depend.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that works for me because I have to be natural. I couldn't just be a facilitative coach. I know that because I've been giving a lot of knowledge as well. I've learned a lot of knowledge, which I feel is important to share that could help people at certain points. So you have to use that too. And it's just finding the right way of doing that. So yeah, and then what I then decided to do is actually to start working with everybody in the company. Because one thing a lot of coaches do, which I've noticed, they want to just do C-suite, they want to do. I think an advantage I have is I've worked across the entire company from the people in sort of back office, the most junior people to the most senior people, because then I get a really good idea of the mood of the business. And to
Okay.
understand the mood of the business is such an amazing thing for a company to have, because I know the themes of how different departments and where they're leaking energy. Companies can leak energy like the human body can leak
Of
energy,
course.
you know?
Hmm.
If your running isn't, if you haven't got your body working completely right, if you don't develop sort of glute activation and understand how to use your glutes during running, which take the pressure off your quads and calves when you engage them properly, then you could leak a lot of energy from your quads and calves and then
Of
fatigue.
course.
So there's all of this mastery of all these things, and I think by me understanding how the theme of the company works and the mood of everybody within it, it gives you a really amazing insight into the company and how it really is feeling and the direction it could be moving towards.
Fantastic. Uh, Tarek, just being mindful of the time. Uh, One of the last questions which I would ask you is that you have had your own challenges.
For sure.
Okay, you would have had your own. I don't say struggles are there, but for people who are listening to this element, we have just not even touched a minuscule part of what you've really gone through.
Mm.
But if there are people who are absolutely being challenged or really down in the dumps or being hit where it hurts the most,
Mm.
what would you suggest? I'm not saying the word advice because advices are in plenty,
No,
but
not.
what would you suggest? What could get them that just maybe another small step to go ahead? What would that be?
I think you have to try and, well, I think there's a couple of things involved in this. One, I think people need to connect to someone else. They need
Mm,
to be able to find someone that they can speak to. I think that's really, really important, just to release how they feel, someone that they feel that they can talk to that's not going to condemn them, and then judge them in a negative way in that sense. I think that's essential. And if I could go back, I mean, I think that's what I would have wanted more than anything else. And I think it would have saved me a lot of challenges and difficulties that I potentially could have, I think, were unnecessary. A lot of wrong decisions, I'd say, because we can all argue and say, oh, well, this all led you to be like this, Tarik. Yeah, but I can show you a lot of situations in my past that could have easily ended up being even more elevated than it is now, because I could have had some right guidance or had someone I could speak to that I felt safe with. I really think that's absolutely essential for someone to have that. And if it's not someone that you know or you feel comfortable, then contact an organization that allows you just to speak, so that active listening, that someone listens and you speak, just to release it out, I think is really important. The other thing is writing. I did a lot of writing to
mm,
get it out of here and just put it on paper and then read it and then understand. I can see a theme recurring here, and so it's like finding a creative way to release some of the pain and tension. So if it's walking in nature, if it's running, if it's going to the gym, if it's learning how to breathe. I mean, this is something that I'm a big, because I teach breath work, powerful. And it's so simple, but it has an immediate effect. And so I'm more than happy just for free just to speak to anybody as well that's struggling, because I know what it's like to, and I hate to use the word that's free, because I believe what we do as coaches is always difficult to, oh, actually, you've got to monetize it. But actually, it's, if people are really struggling, I'd rather they reached out to me, we have a chat, and, that's fine. I'd love that. So I'm more than happy for people to do that with me as well. I've got time as well that I can do that. So,
So, guys, this is just, I mean, what we have just heard from him has been absolutely a gold mine. I don't even talk about nuggets. Here it has been a gold mine. And sorry over there, just to interrupt, is that he just said it on the platform that people can reach out to him.
yeah,
So I will be putting out his contact, his links, and I've just been in touch with Tarik in the recent past, and he's a wonderful human. For me, the journey with Tarik has been just wonderful. So, yep, Tarik, you wanted to just say something, the last words? Sorry about
yeah,
that.
please, if anybody just wants to have a chat, and people who say, "Oh, I'm too worried about, I don't want to spend money, or I can't spend money, I'm financially challenged." I get that too completely. Let's just chat and just have a chat and get something. If I
Super.
can give you a little bit of advice to help you, more than happy to do that. And you look, for you as well, the amazing work that you're doing. I'm looking forward to reading your book as well.
Okay, thank you so very much. So,
I
with
love.
this, thank you. So, with this, I conclude today's session. Thank you for your space and time, Tarik.
Thank
Let me
you. Thank
just
you.